All right, you guys. Good afternoon, or whatever you are beaming in from. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. So today's topic, I'm going to be dealing with information dealing with Dr. Asa Hilliard. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I have a few information I came across. Now it was kind of hard for me to look up some more information about him. So I did what I could for the most part. But I would like to share this source with you. And then I got a video that I want to share as well. And then I got some articles and whatnot. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I do not have Dr. Asa Hilliard's book. All right, so many of you may know about him. Many may heard of him. Many know that he dealt with Egyptian history for the most part, like ancient Egypt. But he was also a psychologist too, as well. So he worked alongside with Dr. Wade Noble. He also did work with Dr. John Henry Clark, and many others. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, let me go ahead and get started. All right, so let's look at the history of Dr. Asa Hilliard. So, according to the information on WikiOne, Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III was born August 22nd, 1933, and he died August 13th, 2017. 2007. So he died 9 days before his birthday. Also known as Nana Bafur Amin Kawatia II, was an African American professor of educational psychology who worked on indigenous ancient African history, ancient Egyptian culture, education, and society. He was the Fuller E. Calloway Professor of Urban Education at Georgia State University, with joint appointments in the Department of Education Policy Studies and the Department of Educational Psychology and Special Education. Prior to his position at Georgia State, Hilliard served as Dean of the School of Education at San Francisco State University in San Francisco, California. All right, so let's look at his career. In 1981, Hilliard introduced the concept of baseline essays, short stories of the experience of a particular geocultural group within a particular academic area from earliest time to the present, to the Portland, Oregon School District. This resulted in a collection of essays advocating Afrocentrism, authored by 6 scholars known as the African American Baseline Essays, which were adopted by the district in 1989. All right, so let's look at that real quick. This advertisement over here. Okay, so what is the African American Baseline Essays? All right, real quick. The African American Baseline Essays are a series of educational material commissioned in 1987 by the Portland Public School District in Portland, Oregon. and compiled by Asa Grant Hilliard III, intended to provide information about the history, culture, and contribution of Africans and African Americans in the discipline of art, language, arts, mathematics, science, social studies, and music, to be used by teachers and other district staff as a reference and resource, just as adopted textbooks and other resources are used as part of a huge multicultural curriculum development effort. All right. So it says history. Despite criticism of their inaccuracies and Egypt-centric outlook, the baseline essays were widely adopted in the early 90s by large school districts throughout the United States. Since the debut of African American baseline essays, 3 other series have been released as part of the PPS Geocultural Baseline Essay Series, focused around American Indians, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans. Criticism. Their inclusion of the essay African and African American Contribution to Science and Technology by Hannah Haviland Adams III was criticized in particular for promoting pseudoscientific ideas like astrology, psychokinesis, and psychoenergetics as Egyptian science. Adams' essay is referenced in the article behind the Sokal affair. In light of this, the baseline essays themselves have sometimes been called a hoax, but they are still available on the Portland Public School website. Okay, so let's see. And then that's the references at the bottom, so you can look up that information for yourself. All right, so Dr. Asa Hilliard, based on what I read so far, he owned many titles, okay? Not just dealing with ancient Egyptian culture, but also just dealing with psychology alone. And one of them happened to deal with African American baseline essays, which is the materials that's in reference to ancient Egyptian culture and other African American history and African history all together. But because there was so many criticism regarding to the information lacking proper sources and the inaccuracies, that's where it becomes problematic. So it was hard. So not many people knew about it. It's still available on the Portland website. So yeah, but because his information was looked at as pseudoscientific because of the things that was incorporated, like psychokinesis and astrology. So, all right, let's go back. Let's continue. Let's see what else we can find. All right. Alrighty then. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, so selected membership. Alliance of Black School Educators, San Francisco chapter founder. American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, board. American Psychology Association, fellow board of Ethnic and Minority Affairs, Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, founding member, vice president, National Black Child Development Institute, founding board member. All right. And select the awards that he received. Republic of Liberia, Knight Commander of the Humane Order of African Redemption, 1972. American Association for Colleges for Teacher, Thurgood Marshall Award for Excellence. American Association of Higher Education Black Caucus, Harold Delaney Exemplary Educational Leadership Award, American Educational Research Association, Distinguished Career Contribution Award, Research and Development Award for Excellent Honorary Doctrines for DePaul University, Woodlock College. He was also the recipient of awards including the Outstanding Scholarship Award from the Association of Black Psychologists and the Distinguished Leadership Award from the Association of Teachers of Education. Hilliard was a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. All right. And so let's go down to his personal life. According to his information, Hilliard was married to Patsy Joe Hilliard, who was the former mayor of East Point, Georgia. Now, she was the former mayor of East Point, Georgia. And speaking of that, as a matter of fact, not only she was a former mayor of East Point, Georgia, but there's like an apartment complex that's named after her. Also, there's a school that's named after Dr. Asa Hilliard. It's an elementary school. It's out here in East Point. It's not far from where I live. The name of the school was it's called Asa Hilliard Elementary. Yep, it's not too far from here. So it's not too far from where I'm at, because I'm not that far from the school in itself. So yeah, the school is named after him. But anyways, let's look up some more information. All right, so he has 4 children: Asa the fourth, Robbie, Patricia, and Hakeem, and 8 grandchildren: Maya, Terry, Tashaka, Faluk, Xavier, Dalo, Shada, and Asa Pearl. Hilliard's grandfather, Asa Grant Hilliard, was a high school principal in Bay City, Texas, for whom the former Hilliard High School was named. His father, Asa Hilliard II, was also a high school principal who spent most of his teaching career in Tyler, Texas. All right. He declared of his work, "I am a teacher, a psychologist, and a historian. As such, I am interested in the aims, the methods, and the content of the socialization processes that we ought to have in place to create wholeness among our people." He believed that all children were capable of achieving excellence. The keys to achievement were high expectation, well-trained teachers, and the abandonment of standardized testing. Hilliard was a pioneer in the fabrication of the African roots of modern civilization and a leading proponent of Afrocentric school curriculum that emphasized the historical achievements of Blacks to promote students' self-esteem. Hilliard authored more than 1,000 publications on subjects including educational policy, teaching strategies, testing, child growth and development, and African history culture. Several of his programs for teaching, assessment, and pluralistic curricula became national models. However, Hilliard claims that many of the world's scientific and cultural achievements were the work of Black Africans, ignited controversy. Now, he had passed away on August 13th, 2007 in Egypt. And according to the information, he died from malaria. All right, so these are his published work. I'm just going to read a few of his published work. The Maroon Within Us, Selected Essays on African American Community Socialization, SBA, The Awakening of the African Mind, Teaching and Learning Anti-Racism, A Developmental Approach, The Teaching of Patah Hotel, The Price They Pay, Desegregation in the African American Community, Infusion of African and African American Content in School Curriculum, African Power, Affirming African Indigenous Socialization in the Face of the Culture Wars, RS for Racism, Imperatives for America's Schools. And then he got some more works down here, books and stuff. The Intellectual Strength of Black Children and Adolescents, A Challenge to Pseudoscience, Institute of African Research, that was written in 1974. And From Ancient Africa to African Americans Today, Portland Public Schools, 1983, with Dr. Barbara Seymour, Saving the African American Child, National Alliance of Black School Educators in 1984. And then Betty M. Caldwell, What is Quality Child Care? National Association for the Education of Young Children in 1985. All right, so there's more publication book chapters, and down here it shows the periodicals of psychological factors associated with language and the education of African American child, Journal of Negro Education, 1983, page 24 to 34. The cultural unity of Black Africa, the dominance of patriarchy and of matriarchy in classical antiquity, Journal of African Civilization, 1986. All right, and then they got the video recordings, Free Your Mind, Return to the Source, African Origins, Testing and Tracking, National Association for the Education of Young Children. All right. First People, Our People, Ancient Egypt Revealed, MEE Production 2001. And then there's more information. So here's a website right here, which is Robert W. Woodruff Library at the Atlanta University Center. So right here on this website shows all the collection of the videos that he has done. There's like several of the lectures that he did, his own home video where he was traveling to Egypt, also the conferences, all of that. So this is the website. It's radar.auctr.edu, Atlanta University Robert W. Woodruff Library, right here. All right. Let's see. And here's another information right here that kind of get into more details about Dr. Asa Hilliard. It's a document resume. It's called A Noted Selected Bibliography and Index for Teaching African American Learners, a culturally responsive pedagogy project, which was written by him. And I'm trying to find what year that was published, in 1997. Right? So, yeah, that's this article right here. I'm not going to really read the article, but I just want to show you guys what the premises is. So basically, it just gives the context of teaching about African American history and the bibliography. That's what it's all about. So, yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna play a video real quick. Jesus. So I'm gonna play a video real fast by Dr. Asa Hilliard, and he deals with the science of racism.
That behavior to disappear. And so over a period of time, figure the centuries that African populations have been in America, it's possible that the population, merely American, each of these is a step or an indication that there is some loss of conscious contact with one's true identity.
You have talked about the neuroses, I guess that's the word maybe, among the European population during this enslaving period. Would you address that, please?
Right. Well, if you operate a system of domination, a formal system of domination, by those rules that I talk about, you have to confront the truth. And the only way that you can be consistent in applying those rules is ultimately to bend the truth. And after a while, it results in an adaptive process that we call racism, which is really a mental disorder. It's a disorder in the mental sense because it follows the rules of mental disorder. For example, manifestations of racist behavior as a result of domination are the denial of reality, perceptual distortion, delusions of grandeur, phobias in the face of differences, and projecting blame, blaming the victim.
Explain those, please.
Well, each of these are ways that I guess you call them adjustment or adaptive mechanisms. For example, if you take Africa as it really existed, and you attempt to subjugate Africa as Europeans did, it couldn't work if you're subjugating another human being. So that human being had to be changed mentally into something else, had to be changed into a subhuman or an animal or anything else. But you could not operate and be consistent with yourself. So it required a change in one's mind, which meant that Europeans had to begin to lie to themselves about what Africa was and had been. And in the process of keeping that misinformation going, then one adapts to unreality. So when you see reality, it's necessary to deny reality. So denial of reality would be an example of that, would be to look at the population of Egypt, which was a black population, and to say it was a white population. That's a flat out denial of what the facts say. And that, of course, has been typical throughout history. Perceptual distortion is just simply not getting a clear view of what is really true, even while looking at the truth. Teaching of white supremacy means the belief in the supremacy of white people, or it could be anyone who would follow the rules of oppression. If one decided that their own group was superior to all other groups, that would be an example of what I call a Napoleonic complex, because it is not true that the white group is superior to anyone else, but the belief in that would be a psychological distortion of reality, and in that sense would be following the rules for oppression.
Okay, as we get ready to go to the first slide, you've said that racism is a mental disorder.
Yes.
I was interviewing a gentleman the other day, and I brought that up in a conversation, and he said, well, racism is not a mental disorder. He said, racism is very ordered. He said that whites, Europeans, know exactly what they're doing, that racism is a political and economic convenience. How do you respond to that?
I think it depends on who you're talking about. If you talk about I think of systems as having designers, as having advocates, as having players, and as having pawns. This is from game theory, and I borrowed that from Bob Williams, who analyzes systems in that way. Everybody is not a game maker or a game designer. So the game designer might be conscious of creating a racist system, whereas the advocate probably becomes unconscious. They buy into the system that was created by the designer. And so the advocate is a racist in the sense that I'm talking about it, or the dealer, those people who carry out the rules of the master in the system without really knowing why the master created the system, or even that a system was created. They just simply inherit a belief system and an action system. And in that sense, they are players in the game, but they are not the game makers. So okay. I make a distinction.
Now break that down for the person on the street one time.
Right.
Go over that again.
So there are some people who are puppets.
All right.
And there are others who are puppeteers.
Thank you. Free your mind.
I'll try to do a better job.
Okay. Free your mind. Return to the source. African origins. Why that title?
Okay. Well, obviously, we've been talking about the fact that the adjustment to domination is kind of a mental adjustment as well as a physical adjustment. So for the person who is enslaved and for the person who enslaves, I've already suggested that there is a distortion between the real world and what they believe. There's a mismatch between those two things. So what we need to do in order to get back at the truth is to have mental freedom. So I like to title this a program about mental freedom. So it's free your mind. Return to the source suggests the way to get to mental freedom. That means going back to primary sources. Instead of talking about what someone heard, let's go to the evidence itself. Also, in the case of African people, it means returning to African sources because that's the only way that renewal can occur. And then, of course, African origins refers to the fact that Africa is the home of many things, and most of us don't know that. And it's been things have been said about Africa that make us believe the opposite of that. We don't believe that Africa was a creative place, that it was a teacher. We believe that Africa was always a recipient, a student of other people. And so African origins, which is the source, one of the sources, by considering those African origins, it's a way to free the mind of oppressor and oppressed. I have a short section that I call the defamation of African people. And the reason that I do this is that it's important to establish the fact that some of the things I said are true. And we won't have time to go into many of these, but I'll just show you an example of the perceptual distortion, the denial of reality, the attempt to erase history, the attempt to oppress culture. All right. In 1910, the Encyclopedia Britannica had an article in it about Negro. This would be one of many examples of how Africans and other people get information about themselves. And here's an example. I actually took a photograph of that article.
All right, so that's that information about Dr. Asa Hilliard. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, okay. So with that being said, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and log out for today. So I thank you all for watching this video. So if you're on my YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video. If you are on Facebook, you can go ahead and share this video as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in. All right. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. And I will reconnect with you guys later. All right, then take it easy. Now, deuces and be safe. All right.